Hi, we're here with Alabama Governor Robert Bentley to talk about what he's doing out and about in the community. This is a busy time, a busy day for you, Governor, so thanks for stopping in to talk with us.
Well, thank you, Sherri.
You had some Republican muscle in town campaigning with you, Governor Chris Christie.
We did.
Tell me a little bit about your campaign right now going into November and bringing him in to raise money. Are you hurting right now?
Well, actually, we were here raising money primarily for the Republican Governors Association.
Okay.
The Republican Governors Association helps elect Republican governors all over the country. I actually have never gotten any money from the Republican Governors Association. I didn't get any last time, and I don't believe that I'll get any this time either, but I'm still trying to help raise money for that organization because they put it in states where it's very, very close. And we're trying to win more seats as far as Republican governors across the country. So we're doing this, and I was helping him. Of course, he was visiting me. He and I are friends, and we've been friends for 4 years. And we're both governors of great states, and we work very closely together.
Were you able to give him any advice after Superstorm Sandy, because you went through Tuscaloosa?
Actually, I did. I was one of the first people to call him. And I said to Chris, what do you need? What do you need in New Jersey? He said, I need utility workers. And so I said, well, I will take care of that. So I made a call to Alabama Power Company, and I said, they need more utility workers in New Jersey. So what are you going to do about helping us? And so Charles McCrary, who's the head of Alabama Power Company, he said, we already have 800 utility workers on the way. And so then I was able to call him back and tell him that we had 800 people on the way. You know, the great thing about states helping each other, we do this all the time.
We covered that as well when those guys got on the road and had it up there.
Right.
And were able to tell some wonderful, wonderful stories. Over the course of your last term, you've talked about jobs. We've seen you out and about at lots of groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, and all sorts of things. But I remember in your inauguration, you talked about Wilcox County and the copper tubing plant and the number of jobs that would be coming to that area that has the highest unemployment in the state. We still are slightly above the national average on unemployment here in Alabama, but your idea right now, where do you think we are in kind of turning the corner? We're at like 6.8% right now.
We are. I think the last one was 6.8%. I think we're doing well right now. I mean, obviously we would like to do better, but if you look at the companies that we've been able to recruit since I've been in office, like Remington, like Airbus, but let me tell you, there are two companies that I'm prouder of than even those two companies. One is Golden Dragon Copper Tubing, which is the company that I recruited the second day in office, and I got them to come to Alabama. And the fact that they went to Wilcox County, the poorest county in America, it's going to change that county. And we just cut the ribbon to open that plant in May, and I'm very proud of that. And it's going to allow people in that county, really not just in that county, all the surrounding areas like Coy and Nanofala and Camden and Pine Hill and all those little small towns around there, people will be able to get a job. And it's going to change their life.
Let me talk a little bit about recruiting those businesses. We know you guys were just over across the pond, if you will, recruiting. But you want to use some of the money from the education fund to recruit, and let's talk about that, because some people thought, he wants to do what?
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't want to take it out of the education trust fund. That's when you get a misquote put into print that's then picked up by another person, and then by another person, and then by another person. Never was accurate from the beginning.
Let's set it straight.
Yes. I said this when I said my statement, that I do believe that if there is a way for education funding, some of the funding, which is in our stabilization fund, to help with incentives to bring more money back into education, that is something that we're just going to look at. We really don't have any concrete plans yet on how we're going to do this. But I did say this specifically. I said I will never take money out of the education trust fund for this purpose, never. And that was not, it was reported kind of a little bit, but really not picked up. But at the end of my talk, that's exactly what I said. And we would never do that. We're going to bring millions of dollars into the Education Trust Fund from the beginning. And we're not ever going to hurt education. We're trying to help education.
So not money in the general fund that would go towards education that would now be going towards recruiting business?
Well, right now we pay for incentive money. We pay for it really with royalties from oil and gas. And we do it for the bond issues that we have put in place. And we have a $750 million cap on those bonds that we have borrowed in order to use that money for incentives. And it is a very competitive game. And so we have to have the incentives. So right now we are financing our incentives with debt. And I'm just not for financing things with debt. I want it to be a pay-as-you-go. This is a very complicated issue, but I just want people to realize, to simplify all of this, that we will never, ever hurt the Education Trust Fund. And in fact, last year, some of this was brought to me, and I saw that it could possibly hurt the Education Trust Fund, and I said, you take that off the table. We are not going to ever consider that.
We were talking a little bit before the interview that you are, president of the Board of Trustees for Alabama and for Auburn in an upcoming meeting. But the cost of higher education is one of those things. I am a parent with a son in college.
That's right.
We just think it's through the roof.
And I do too.
What can we do?
First, let me say this. Higher education is a big business. I mean, it truly is. I mean, they have to make ends meet. They have to make a payroll. They have to pay expenses. They have to do the same thing that businesses have to do every day. The product they produce are students. Now, it does cost a lot of money to educate students. So what do we do to have the best education at a reasonable price? One of the things I encourage people to do all the time is to start in the two-year college system. That is a very economic way to get your first 2 years of college. If you're having trouble making ends meet and having trouble getting an education, take the first 2 years at a great junior college, and we have them all over the state. They do a fantastic job. So take your first 2 years there, and then take your second 2 years at Alabama, Auburn, or Troy, or wherever else you want to go.
But here in Alabama, our kids grow up, they're indoctrinated into the schools here. They want to go to school in Alabama. They want to go to the big schools in Alabama, and they want to be able to afford them.
Look, it is a real problem right now. That is something that we are going to look at in the second term. It is a real issue for parents. It is a real issue for students. And we are going to have to look at that, because we do want people who wish to get a BS degree or to go on further, like I did. I have 24 years of education. To go on further, when you don't have the money, like I didn't, and had to borrow it, I had to borrow money to go to school or had to work. We need to help people get the education that they desire. And we need educated people in Alabama. It is important. Let me tell you something that was very interesting. It's when I went to Farnborough just recently to the air show. While I was there talking to Boeing and Raytheon and GE Aviation and some of these large corporations, I told them at that time that I had brought with me the deans of engineering from Auburn and Alabama. Well, they were very excited about that because they need engineers. And so then we were able to let those deans go back and talk to them after I finished talking with them. So those are some of the things that we do as a state as far as recruiting companies to come to Alabama. So higher education is very important. The educating our students as far as engineering and things like this are very important for creating more jobs in this state.
Just a couple more questions for you. One of them, you talked about the next term. You are a heavy favorite going into the November elections. Talk a little bit about Parker Griffith and your opponent.
Well, let me say this. I have nothing bad to say about anybody. I don't talk about people. He is my opponent. He is running, has a right to do that. I want everyone out there to realize that I do not take this office for granted. This office belongs to the people. The people decide who they want to serve. as their governor. I want to do that because I've loved doing that, and I think that we've made good progress. We've put plans in place. We've carried those out. We've carried out our promises, and we've got greater plans for the future. But the people will have to make that decision, and because it is their office. I never take for granted, even though people think that I have a lead and all this, I never take that for granted. I appreciate every day the opportunity that I have to serve the people of this state. And, you know, I do ask people for their vote when I'm out there because I don't take that for granted.
You have said that you do plan a special session in November, though, or you'll discuss a special session after November.
That is one of the potential ways of looking at this. But what we're doing right now is I'm working with the leadership of the legislature, with our pro tem, Dale Marsh, and our Speaker of the House, Mike Hubbard, and other leaders of the legislature, our committee chairman. I'm working with them right now, and I have tasked them with getting together with my policy people and their people together to come up with ideas that they're going to bring back to me, how we're going to really solve some of the problems that we're going to be facing over the next 4 years. I am not a caretaker governor. And we're going to solve problems. There is no problem out there that can't be solved.
Let me circle back to where we started with Chris Christie coming to Alabama and the Republican Governors Association. And so this idea of Alabama being this sort of hub for the Republican Party coming in, raising money. It's a strong state. The Republican Party is strong in the state of Alabama. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and they talked about some of the African Americans running as Republicans in districts that are heavily black districts in the state. Can you talk about the diversity within the party?
Well, let me tell you, we have really worked hard on that as far as diversity. We want people who are conservative, who care about their families, who really believe, like I believe, that you educate the people of this state and you give them an opportunity to have a job, and that lifts everybody out of poverty. That's what we're doing in Wilcox County. That's how it's going to change it. And that's why in Wilcox County we've gotten every child in that county in a quality pre-K program, because I'm very strong on pre-K education in this state. So we want more diversity. I believe in diversity. I don't. I have a number of individuals that work with me that are African American, but we don't really look at that. We look at quality, we look at character, and we choose people because of what the job that they can do and what they bring.
The outsiders looking into Alabama, certainly the immigration issue is one that we seem to have struggled with in our state, and now the federal government is talking about bringing in some of those children who've crossed the border unaccompanied and illegally into Maxwell Air Force Base. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say, I do not think the federal government has done their job as far as setting a clear policy and upholding that policy. I don't care what their policy is. Honestly, I don't. I don't care if they have more guest workers that come in. I just want them to have a clear policy so that we know what it is, and then they need to enforce that policy. Now, we do need to secure our borders. Everyone wants to come to America. Everybody in the rest of the world wants to come to America. And because America's free, it's the greatest nation in the world, so everybody wants to come. We can't take in everyone, and we can't take care of them when they come unless they had a job and unless they have a way to support themselves. But we do have a way that immigrants can come in and become citizens of this country. They need to take advantage of that. Maybe we need to change that some. I don't know, but the federal government needs to set a policy, carry out that policy.
Do you think that immigrants in this state feel welcome in Alabama?
You know, I do think, and I will be totally honest when I say that when we passed that legislation, it appeared to many legal immigrants that they were not being welcomed in our state, and we did not mean that. And because we do want legal immigrants in this state. They're very important to America. all of us, our families were immigrants. You know, unless you were a Native American Indian, you know, you were an immigrant. Your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents were immigrants. And so that's what this country was made from.
Well, now some folks were brought in here.
Well, some people were.
Yeah.
You're right about that. Some people were without them wanting to come, and I agree with that. But I would say most. Yes, you know, historically, you're exactly right. But I will say this. I think that we do have policies, and we need to uphold those policies on a national level. Now, it's a difficult decision right now, and I have a lot of empathy for a 6-year-old or 8-year-old child that comes into this country, and they don't have parents with them. I mean, what are you going to do with those children?
And folks are saying it's a humanitarian issue at this point. You agree?
I do agree with that. I do agree with that. And I am not going to be so cold-hearted to say, oh, yeah, just put them on a bus and send them back. I mean, you know, I don't believe our policies are being upheld correctly, or we wouldn't have this problem. But if you see a child that has no parents, what are you going to do? I mean, someone has to take care of that child.
So you're okay with them coming to Maxwell Air Force Base?
Well, let me say that I don't think Maxwell Air Force Base is a good place to house these children because it's not set up for that. That's like a concentration camp. So I don't think that is the best way to do it. I do think it is a humanitarian dilemma right now for the federal government. And you know, I know people criticize them, and I also criticize the policy not being carried out. But I will say this. I think that it's something that has to be solved in a humanitarian way. I really do, because, you know, you do have to care about people, and you don't want some child hurt. I don't.
Last question for you, Governor. National spotlight on Alabama. The SCLC is meeting here, and today they're talking about the DNC coming to Birmingham, and I know you're aware that they are recruiting. What do you think of that?
Well, you know, I've been a Republican all my life, and I watch both conventions. I do. I asked Mayor Bell, I said, Mayor Bell, what if I'm the Republican nominee for president? I said, and y'all have the Democrat, and I was kidding. Of course, I'm not going to be. But,
well, it's because you're not running.
Well, no, I'm not running. I'm running for governor. You know, anything that we can do to help tourism in Alabama, anything that we can do to help businesses and put more people back to work by bringing people in, I'm for that. I'm not so partisan to say that we wouldn't welcome anybody to come into Alabama. We would, because it'll help businesses, it'll help restaurants, it'll help hotels, it'll get people working. There's so many things that it would do to help Birmingham. Anything we can do to help Birmingham, I'm for it.
All right, Governor Bentley, thank you for talking with us. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I would just like to say that I love what I do. And I love serving the people of this state, and it is a true honor to do what I do.